The decision on the Auckland location for the next America's Cup will be decided this week. Team New Zealand are facing an uphill battle to get their preferred $190 million Halsey Wharf extension approved, with Mayor Phil Goff favouring a cheaper option of setting up several bases across multiple wharves around Wynyard Quarter and Tamaki Makaurau. But one business expert thinks both options are underwhelming, to say the least. Ashley Church is with us this morning. Tēnā koe, Ashley.
Good morning, Jack.
Why does this matter?
I think to put this in some sort of context, I mean, New Zealand punches way above its weight in a whole range of different sports. But with all due respect to soccer and league and cricket and a number of other codes, there are only two codes in which we go into those sports expecting to win, where we know we are the favourites, the outstanding favourites. One of those obviously is All Black Rugby. The other one is America's Cup Yachting. And the additional pressure there is that America's Cup Yachting is also hosting of what is the oldest and most prestigious sporting event on the planet. So that puts a pretty extraordinary and enormous burden of responsibility on the country which actually hosts it, and on the council and the government in this case, to make sure it happens. Commensurate with, I would argue, Rugby World Cup. It's at that sort of level.
I wonder sometimes if the America's Cup is hamstrung by the fact that we all sort of forget about it for a couple of years in the middle. You know, with the All Blacks, you have them playing all the time. So we're always aware of what's happening with the team, how they're shaping up against the rest of the world. But with the America's Cup, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind for a little bit.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because I would actually argue that the reason that happens is that the communication which should be taking place right now isn't actually taking place. And so when you think of Rugby World Cup, and the level of interest in that, I would argue, is commensurate. Yeah. With Rugby World Cup, there's a communications process in place right through the process, right up until the event takes place. Everybody's interested to know. You guys in the media, the public. That hasn't happened with this event, and I would argue that it should have. We should have known pretty much from the day that we won this cup what was going to happen after that.
Yeah, what do you make of the time frame so far? It's almost 6 months.
Oh, I'm really worried. I'm really worried. I would argue that we should have swung into action almost immediately. We knew this was going to happen, or we at least knew that there was a chance we were going to win. There should have been, not necessarily an announcement on basis, because we didn't know where they were going to be, but there should have been some indication of what was going to happen at that point. Here we are 6 months down the track. Now, let's put this in context. We're talking about holding this thing in summer of 2021. We know that from previous syndicates that we've hosted and other countries that have hosted, that some of the syndicates like to be there as much as 2 years in advance of the event. You go back from 2021, that takes you to summer 2019. Jack, that's just over a year away.
Yeah.
That's scary stuff. And it's not just the impact on the syndicates, it's also private sector investment that would get involved in developing around that base. They need a lead time as well. If you look at what happened with the viaduct took some time to develop, and the private sector needed to know what was going to happen before it could decide what sort of investment it was going to put.
We should have some progress this week. What do you make of the options that are on the table?
Oh, as you said before, a little bit underwhelming, and it's been a little bit of a comedy of errors. We had firstly the announcement that there were 5 options, then very quickly Ports of Auckland said that Captain Cook Wharf wasn't an option, and so we were then back to only 3 on Halsey Street. That was as recent as last week. Yesterday we had the Minister of Economic Development, David Parker, coming out and saying, well, in fact, he reserved the right to go right back to the drawing board, ignore all of those, and look at a new option, which was going to be on Beaumont Street. So we're none the wiser as to where we're actually going to end up.
To get the most out of this economically, what has to happen in terms of where the bases are put? And from there on out, what needs to happen in terms of communication between the council and the America's Cup organisers?
It's bigger than that. There are 5 things I think need to happen straight away. Firstly, we need an immediate decision, and I mean immediate, next few weeks, on what's going to happen with regard to the bases. I would argue we need something like an Office of the America's Cup, which is about coordination of infrastructure, which is about coordination of funding between the various parties.
But we had it for the Rugby World Cup.
We did have it for the Rugby World Cup. This deserves the same sort of attention. We need clarity around funding. I think we need some enabling legislation. We need an America's Cup Act so that we don't get, for example, people holding us hostage on legal challenges around sites once they're decided, and we need some sort of channel for public participation. None of those things appear to be in place at the moment.
What happens if we don't sort it out?
Oh, look, I'm confident that we will get there, at least in respect of the council and the government's involvement, but it will be just in time, and it will squander an opportunity for the private sector to be involved in a much more comprehensive way, which would be beneficial for the country.
That is really interesting. Thanks for your insight, Ashley. Really appreciate it. Ashley Church.
Oh, we might need a working bee by the sounds of that.
Yeah.